Hey guys, what is up? What is going on? Welcome back to another video. And in today's video, we are going to be predicting, obviously, very early, a 2024 potential matchup between Tulsi Gabbard, former Congresswoman from Hawaii, and Mike Pence, who is going to be our former Vice President by January 20th, still the current Vice President. So, yeah, I did finally remember to get this onto the 2024 map. So, yeah, now I think these are interesting candidates because both have interesting crossover appeal. Pence might appeal to conservative Democrats, and Tulsi Gabbard could appeal to even hardcore Trump Republicans. Um, uh, but neither has super strong base appeal. I mean, like there are a lot of Democrats who really don't like Tulsi Gabbard because of her fight with Hillary Clinton. Her apparently, people don't trust her on LGBTQ right issues. Um, and then for Mike Pence, people think that he's not as paleo conservative as he should be. So it's an interesting matchup. But yeah, so we're gonna get started by filling out these safe states for Tulsi Gabbard. I think she has the same safe states as anyone else, I believe. Um, so yeah, that should do it for her safe states. For Mike Pence, he'd have essentially the same safe states as as I think Trump maybe. I think he'd win. He'd hold on to Missouri safe. He'd win West Virginia safe. He wouldn't win Alaska safe, but he has 112 safe electoral votes. So yeah, now moving on to our likely states. These aren't as interesting. I think Tulsi Gabbard. Oh, and she'd win Colorado. She'd win Colorado safe. Uh, Tulsi Gabbard would probably carry New Mexico by a likely margin, similar to Joe Biden. Maybe do a little better with Hispanic vote. She'd win Virginia by a little less than Biden. I don't think that she's as good in the suburbs as Biden potentially could be, but we don't know that yet. So a lot of this is just based on what I know, and I don't know too much about Tulsi Gabbard. Obviously, I'm not oblivious, but I do know, but I'm not an expert on her. I haven't been talking about her for the past several months the way I've been talking with Joe Biden. So, yeah, and Maine at large, that's pretty obviously a likely Democratic state. I do think that she'd carry Minnesota likely. I think she'd win it by around 5 to 6%, maybe the same margin as Joe Biden, but they're trending red overall a little bit. But I think she'd see a similar margin. I think she'd do better with the hardcore Trump voters in like these areas, but she'd do worse in the suburbs. But either way, I think she'd win Minnesota by same margin as Biden, maybe even a little better. Again, it varies. And I think she'd carry New Hampshire that same amount as Biden, just because I think New Hampshire is kind of staying a constant for the Democratic Party. Now, for the likely Republican states, I think Texas would be, or not Texas. I think Alaska would be likely for Donald Trump. This has been kind of a likely Republican state for a while. I think he'd win South Carolina likely. But other than that, I don't see. Oh, he'd win Maine at large likely, but by like 5%, it would be close because Tulsi Gabbard has a lot of crossover appeal. And also, I've been saying Donald Trump, but I'm talking about Mike Pence. Mike Pence would win Maine second district, but by 5%. Closer to lean than safe. Now for the lean Tulsi Gabbard states, I think she'd win Nevada lean, seeing as she does have decent Hispanic. She didn't really compete in any of these primaries. I mean, she didn't drop out till like March, but still, I just haven't really seen any interesting performances for her to show that she's good with Hispanics or bad with Hispanics. So I'm just going to say that she wins it by same as Joe Biden. But I do think that she'd carry the Rust Belt by a lean margin. I think she's a good candidate for the Rust Belt, partially, and as you can see, that's 270 right there. And I think she's a good candidate for the Rust Belt, partially because of her appeal to the Trump voters. Now, I don't think she'd do as well in the suburbs as Joe Biden, but I think she'd get a lot of these rural Trump voters on her side. Now, she obviously wouldn't win the rural counties, but I think she could do a lot better than Joe Biden did there. And I think she could do just as well in the urban areas. So yeah, I think that'll be all the lean Democratic states. Whoops. So yeah, now to the lean Republican states, I think Texas would be lean. I think Pennsylvania by 4 or 5. I think Gabbard would outperform Biden because of the growing Hispanic population, the growing metro area population, specifically San Antonio. I think she just cut into the margins of Joe Biden, of Donald Trump in 2020. In northern Texas, especially over here, which is very rural, very pro-Trump areas. Looking at some of these counties, they're like 80% for Trump and 15% for Biden. So very, very pro-Trump areas, but I think she could, get 25% of the vote, maybe 30% of the vote there. So I think that should do it. Actually, Pence would carry Ohio lean. I think you win it by maybe 2 to 3, 3 to 4. Now, Ohio has interesting swings because, Bush won it twice, but then Obama won it. We saw like a 7-point swing to the left. And they split their tickets sometimes, like in 2018. Sherrod Brown won re-election there by 7%, and Mike DeWine won by 3%. So there was a 10% swing there, or 10%, of the electorates split their ticket, which is a good amount. So, but I do think Pence would still carry it, but I think Gabbard would improve on Joe Biden's numbers there. Oh yeah, and I forgot to mention she carried Nebraska second by a lean margin, or by a likely margin. So yeah, so it'll come down to Iowa is obviously a toss up kind of, and then the Sun Belt is toss up. So. How long is this video going to be? This is going to be kind of short because I don't have a ton of information on either of these candidates. But yeah, obviously I haven't seen any polling data, but I think Gabbard's going to win Iowa. I do. Iowa has insane swings. I mean, like Obama won it by, or Bush won it by I think 4% in 2004. And then Obama came around 4 years later, won it by 9%, and then 2016 Trump won it by 9%, and then 2 years later the Democrats won the House vote by 4%, and then 2020 we saw a swing back to Trump where he won it by 8%. So I really do think that if the Democrats are on the right candidate in Iowa, they can win there narrowly. I think Gabbard will win it. It will be very close. But I think she has appealed to a lot of these hardcore Trump voters. Like in the first district up here, this is a very pro-Trump district. This is the pro-Trump district. The rest are kind of toss-up districts, but the pro-Trump district, that's Randy Feenstra's district, very pro-Trump. So I do think she'd cut into the margin there. I think she'd get like 45% of the vote there. I think she could win these other 3 districts and just improve in the rural areas. And Iowa's not super suburban. It's a rural state where Democrats have to just appeal to the white vote, which Hillary Clinton and Joe Biden couldn't do to the extent of Barack Obama. So, but I think Gabbard could do that. I think she could narrowly carry the state. It will be by 1%, but I think she'd narrowly win it. Now, I do think that Pence would actually. I think Pence would hold on to Florida first of all. I think it would be very, very close, but I think he'd hold on to Florida. I think Gabbard would improve on Biden's margins in Miami-Dade because of her not really. The socialist label hasn't really stuck on her. I do think she'd lose Duval County, but I think she'd maybe lose Pinellas as well. But I think she'd improve on the Panhandle. She'd improve in the I-4 corridor, meaning that she'd lose by around 1 to 2%. But Florida's trending red overall. Since 2012, it's been trending red. So I think that Pence would hold on to it. Pence would also carry Georgia. I know this is kind of unpopular because Biden won Georgia. There's a lot of hype about the runoffs. People, Georgia, blue state. I don't know, because I think Georgia is a very establishment Republican state. They like establishment Republicans, maybe moderate neocon Republicans. Obviously, the Rust Belt is a different story, but really, Donald Trump was not very well liked in Georgia. Joe Biden had high enough black turnout to win the state. He also did well in the suburbs. That's how he won. A lot of things going in his favor there. I just don't see Gabbard being able to have a high enough black turnout. I think she'd have high black turnout, but not as high as Biden did in Georgia. I also don't think that she'd do as well in the suburbs. Now, obviously, she could cut into the Trump country support in the very northern tip of Georgia, but I still just don't see her being able to flip it, and I think that they'd still stick with Trump, or with Pence, rather. So I think Pence would win it by 0.5%. It would be very, very close, but he'd still hold on. Now, Tulsi Gabbard, I think Arizona's the biggest toss-up, but I'm going to give it to Gabbard because here's the thing. Excuse me. I think if Iowa goes to a Democrat, I think in 2024 Arizona would too. I think Gabbard would win by around the same margin as Biden by like 14,000 votes or whatever. Maybe I think it might actually be 12,000 votes. But I still think that she'd carry Arizona. I mean, I think she could do a little bit better than Biden with the Hispanic vote. Now, she'd lose support in the suburbs, which is really bad, especially for Maricopa County, which is the ultimate bellwether in Arizona. But I do think that she could, like I said, I've been saying this a lot, I think she could do better with the diehard Trump voters, and I think she could do better with the Native American vote as well. Although Biden actually did very well, surprisingly well, with the Native American vote. But Gabbard narrowly hold on to Arizona just because the state's trending blue. But our last toss-up is North Carolina, and I think Pence would hold on to it. I mean, Tom Tillis and Mike Pence are kind of similar in that they're both establishmentary and right-wing Republicans. Tillis was able to win by like 1.7%, I believe, and I think Pence would win by a similar margin, maybe a little less. Tulsi Gabbard is actually very well liked by some Trump supporters, and I think that they might actually split their ticket and vote for like Republicans at the Senate level or whatever. Or actually, there wouldn't be a Senate election in North Carolina in 2024, but maybe at the governor level there will be a governor level or a governor election, but they'd vote for Gabbard, and I think that's what make it close, seeing as she's not very good with the suburbs. But other than that, she lose North Carolina, it'll be close. But yes, this is the final map. It's a bit wonky, I agree, and I'm gonna get like, whoops, no way, and I do get a lot of comments saying, "Oh, you know anything about politics? Is you think this and this?" Remember, this is A 2024. B Tulsi Gabbard is a very interesting candidate for the Democratic Party. A lot of people within her party who don't like her, but a lot of people outside of her party who really do like her. So, yeah. But this is the video. Thank you for watching. Big video coming out later this week. I'm going to have to edit it. I'm going to go edit it right now after I finish wrapping up this video. But thank you for your continued support, and I'll see you all next one.